Hi there, welcome to my channel. It's me here from this house with a very special Christmas Eve story for all of our little friends. Now, it's late on Christmas Eve and Santa is getting ready to make his annual rounds, delivering presents to all the nice boys and girls around the world. Of course, we all know that he's got to squeeze down those chimneys and leave the presents under the tree. But what if Santa was too big for the chimney? Well, that's exactly what happens in today's hilarious story, where Santa gets stuck in some very unlikely places. It's called Santa's Stuck. Once upon a time, there was a jolly fat man named Santa Claus who lived at the North Pole. He was always extremely busy, especially during Christmas time, because that's when he had to travel around the world with his reindeer and deliver presents to every single child. He would go down their chimneys and leave them under the Christmas tree while they were sleeping. But one Christmas Eve, Santa had a little bit of a problem. He had eaten so many cookies and drunk so much milk that he felt uncomfortably full and very, very sleepy. And being jolly and full did not make Santa Claus very flexible. When he tried to squeeze down a chimney, he got stuck halfway through. He tried to shimmy himself down, but it didn't work. So he had to come back up again. He needed a plan. He couldn't possibly finish all these deliveries if he kept getting stuck. Just then, one of Santa's elves came running up to him, out of breath. "Santa," he cried, "Mrs. Claus has just sent word that dinner is ready." Santa Claus smiled. That sounded like a wonderful idea. He was so full from all the sweets he'd had earlier, but he was sure he could make room for just a little bit more, and off he went, trotting happily towards the big feast. On his way, though, he saw a house with a giant plate of cookies on the windowsill. It looked delicious, so he stopped to have just one little snack before he had dinner. He reached for the first cookie on the plate, but it was too small for his big hands, so he knocked the whole stack off the sill. They went crashing down onto the ground below. Santa Claus sighed. Now he had to pick up every single crumb or Mrs. Claus would be cross, so he got down on his hands and knees and began to collect the fallen cookies. A few minutes later, he looked down at his hands and realized that he couldn't bend his fingers anymore. They were just too full of delicious cookie crumbs. Santa Claus struggled to stand up, but his knees buckled under his weight and he collapsed right back down onto the ground in a big, fat heap. He tried to shake it off, but now his elbows buckled, too. He couldn't move at all. Just then, some kids came running by, sledding down the hill. "Hey, look," they cried, "there's a mountain of cookies over there. Let's build a fort and eat them all up." And with Santa trapped underneath their new snow fort, they merrily munched on cookie after cookie until they were full as can be. Then they started to play a game of capture the flag. And unfortunately, Santa Claus was stuck right in the middle of their fort. Every time they charged past him to try to capture the flag, he was knocked over and over again. After a while, the children got tired of playing. They left the fort and went back to their houses. Soon after, the snow began to fall softly from the sky, blanketing the entire yard in white, and Santa Claus stayed stuck in the middle of it all. At last, after a long nap, he woke up. His hands were a little looser now, so he slowly started to dig himself out of the snow. As he emerged from his icy tomb, he brushed the snow off his suit and continued on his way to Mrs. Claus's house. He hadn't delivered any presents yet, and the sun was beginning to rise. He was already late. He started to run, but he wasn't paying attention where he was going, and he tripped right over a tree root. Down he went, tumbling head over heels until he landed, plop, right inside a giant gingerbread house. Santa Claus sat up and dusted himself off. This place looked delicious. He couldn't help himself. He took one big bite out of the gingerbread wall. It tasted so good. He ate and ate until he felt even fuller than before. Then he noticed a sign on the wall that read, "Beware of dog." Suddenly, Santa heard a loud bark. A huge dog came bounding over his gingerbread prison. He barked and snarled, wanting to protect his house. Santa Claus tried to explain that he was just trying to get out, but the dog wouldn't listen. He kept growling and snapping at Santa, who was trapped inside the gingerbread house, and all that extra sugar was making him very, very sleepy. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes for just a little rest, but unfortunately, he accidentally fell fast asleep. The dog kept barking and growling the whole time, and Santa slept right through it all. When he finally woke up, he found a small hole near the top of the gingerbread house. It was just big enough for a man to squeeze through, so Santa wriggled himself through the opening and tumbled to the ground outside. Now he was free. He started to walk away, but then he heard a small whimper. He turned around and saw the little puppy from before. It looked lost and scared. Santa Claus picked it up and gave it a little pat. It licked his hand, wagging its tail. Santa knew he couldn't leave the puppy all alone, so he brought it with him as he continued his rounds. Soon they came to another house. Santa Claus climbed up to the chimney and squeezed himself inside. He started to slide down, but he was too big. He got stuck again, but this time it was a little bit different. Santa was stuck sideways, and the puppy was still in his pocket. It started to bark and growl, and Santa Claus laughed. That sounded pretty funny to him. He wiggled himself from side to side and finally popped out of the chimney. He was stuck up to his waist, and the puppy was barking frantically. Santa had an idea. He pulled the puppy out of his pocket and asked it to do something very important. He put a cookie on the ground and asked the puppy to go and fetch another one from the windowsill. The puppy yipped happily and dashed off to do its job. Santa Claus used the time while the puppy was gone to wiggle himself free of the chimney. Then he quickly joined the puppy in fetching the cookie. Together they made several trips back and forth until Santa was finally free from the chimney, and both of them were very well fed. He patted the puppy on the head. "Good boy," he said. "You helped me very much today, but now I have to keep going." And off he went, trotting merrily down the street. Now, having learned his lesson, he was much more careful where he was going, and he wasn't nearly as hungry anymore. In fact, he was actually quite full after all those cookies. He finished his rounds without any further interruptions, leaving presents for all the nice boys and girls. When he got back to the North Pole, he ate a huge plate of Mrs. Claus's famous sugar cookies and drank a big glass of milk. Then he took a long, luxurious nap. That was the best Christmas Eve ever. And why wouldn't it be? After all, it was the most wonderful time of the year. The end. Did you like this fun Christmas story about Santa getting stuck in some very unusual places? If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so that you never miss an exciting story.